use Jynx. So Jynx is alright when you kind of look at it from a sweeper standpoint. That doesn't really need the defenses and offenses as a sweeper. It has a good amount of special attack, but not the best speed. However, you can kind of make that speed work into your favor. You can get Jynx to be a generic kind of typical sweeper for special attack. Problem is, it's outclassed by a lot of other Pokemon. A lot of other Pokemon are just outright faster and outright hit harder, and they don't take as much to make it work. Jynx is also very limited in that it doesn't have a good amount of defense, so that way, if you get hit by almost anything physical, Jynx is just going to fold like paper, and special defense, even then with your low hit points, kind of makes it hard to endure a solid special attack move. So Jynx does have like a lot of limitations, and then when we go and look at its typing, limitations get even more and more. That ice psychic typing sounds really cool, like for stab, psychic stab and ice, yes please. Weaknesses? No, because you have 6 weaknesses and you only have 2 resistances. So overall, you don't have anything defensive really going for you, and offensively, as I mentioned, there are Pokemon that do your job better as a sweeper. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we see the overall nature of Jynx, that you want to run modest, get as much special attack out there as you can. 361 special attack isn't bad at all, and with that 95 base speed, with the Scarf, you're going to be very hard to catch, so you're going to at least have a lot of speed. On top of that, Jynx's move pool is pretty solid, that you get a good amount from Ice Beam and Psychic. Very awesome stab to have. Ice Beam for the Dragons, Psychic just for an overall huge amount of damage. Then overall your coverage is really well too, that you have Energy Ball and Shadow Ball, so you can generally find something to hit super effective, and you're going to be able to maybe get a good solid KO off of it just right off the bat, even though your Scarf, because you have such a good special attack from the modest nature. Its abilities, Forewarn isn't the greatest. Oblivious, you're not really doing anything that makes it to where, like, if you're infatuated or taunted, it would bring you down. So I was just going with the Dry Skin ability, Healed by Water, so it's good to at least have that immunity. It's good to kind of see, like, maybe I could switch in Jynx onto a water type attack and then get something out of it. On the other end of the spectrum, you could run Jynx with Choice Specs, that essentially the same moveset, but you're going to be timid instead. So you're not going to be able to outspeed as much, but you're going to have a higher special attack damage from that Choice Specs. So you can kind of look at it from that more offensive standpoint. And other than that, Jynx also has a nasty plot set. This set could be very, very strong as well, because again, we're looking at a very wide amount of coverage, and as long as you outspeed it and set up that nasty plot, you actually have a chance of really doing some damage. So nasty plot's going to double your special attack. Over 600 special attack with that coverage is not bad. Focus Sash is going to keep you alive, and if no other Pokemon have more than 317 speed, you kind of can win from there. So overall, Jynx, like I said, it's very limited, but it does have a nasty plot set. So if you can catch your opponent off guard and get that going and outspeed them, that's going to be very solid. Other than that, though, you're going to want to Scarf with Modest or Specs with Timid. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. That's how you use Jynx. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is a guide from Mega Slowbro. Mega Slowbro really showcases, along with all of the other Megas we've been looking at, the strength and the precision that Game Freak is trying to adjust the metagame with all these Mega Pokemon. That you have some of the most absurdly strong Pokemon in the game from an outright sweeping standpoint to an outright defensive standpoint, and there's different Pokemon for each situation. Some sweepers are going to work better on some teams than others, that some tanks are going to be working better on some teams than others to fill different roles, that you can use those tanks in different ways, you can use the sweepers in different ways. A lot of these Mega Pokemon transition, a lot of these Mega Pokemon don't have to Mega, that you can bring a non-Mega of one of these Pokemon, and it can still just leave a guessing game for your opponent that creates its own dynamic. And then Mega Slowbro comes in, and it's just a monstrous tank. Like, does that look like the face of mercy to you? No. This Pokemon has 180 defense, absurd amount, well, not an absurd amount, but a really good amount of special attack that doesn't even need to be boosted too much from EVs, a great amount of hit points, and a good amount of special defense to back it up. This Pokemon is going to be frustratingly hard to knock out, and it gets Shell Armor. It can't be critted. So that means if you use Calm Mind and you have maxed out defense, nothing can stop you. Really, like, the only way that your opponent can catch up to you is outpacing you on a defensive, or like on an offensive level, but they can't rely on a crit to try to break those defenses, which means if you get set up, you're staying, and that's it. Just game over for your opponent. That's kind of absurd. So when we look at its typing, it's a Water Psychic type, and a lot of weaknesses, which is kind of like, we expect these weaknesses with regular Slowbro, so since regular Slowbro does become stronger when it Megas, it's a weird trade-off. Like, these weaknesses make it tough, but if you can set up outside the weaknesses, you can survive the weaknesses once you're set up pretty well. And then you still have a lot of resistances, good amount of neutral hits. Let's just hop into Pokemon Showdown and go over some sets I was thinking about. So, the first thing that popped into my mind was Shell Armor, Calm Mind, Iron Defense. I don't care. Just Calm Mind, Iron Defense with a defensive nature. Using Bold, you're going to drop that attack, boost that defense, max hit points, max special defense. Now, if you see a physical threat, Iron Defense. They can't Swords Dance, they can't Dragon Dance, they can't keep up. And then with special defense, you just use Calm Mind, max that out, boom, Ice Beam. So, there's a lot of things that you can put here. That the idea is you can use Scald. Scald's going to get stabbed, have a really strong amount of damage, a lot of PP, have a chance to burn your target, and that's really strong. Like, the only problem here is you can get walled out by Storm Drain and Water Absorb. So anything that, like, nullifies water types will wall you out. But other than that, like, Scald is very strong. Ice Beam doesn't have, like, anything that'll really straight up stop it. And then with Slack Off, you have Sustain. And again, one of the main problems when you're playing a defensive Pokemon, like, the biggest thing I see with Snorlax is I'll lose to a crit. That my philosophy is I have a 6.25 chance to lose the game. Not with Shell Armor. Like, that's it. My chance to lose essentially goes away. That if you set up Slowbro early, it's over. Now, of course, there is one thing. You can get out status, like Toxic and Burn can really mess you up, which means you could even run Rest. Like, I would be confident running Rest on a Mega Slowbro. That if I have +2 in my Iron Defense or +2 or 3 on a Calm Mind with these stats, I'm going to wake up and I'm still going to have a turn to do whatever I want with. That I'm going to become a 4, 5, 6 hit KO Pokemon, and it just gets better from there. So that's what I'm playing. Like, you can do all sorts of kind of crazy stuff with this. And there's many ways of running Mega Slowbro. Like, you could encounter one of many sets that I was thinking you could also go a little more mixed. Put some investment into special defense, put some into defense, run Calm Mind, Slack Off, 2 coverage moves, and you're still going to be very good from there. That by putting more into your defense, you don't have to worry about the Iron Defense. And then your special defense, a little extra Calm Mind boosting, you're good to go. Now you have Scald and Ice Beam, so you have the coverage and you have the burn chance and all those shenanigans. Also, if Scald burns, your defenses get a nice little boost anyways, so it's just ridiculous. And then Trick Room. So this is kind of more like a doubles coverage idea, that you have Trick Room. So very reliable, very tanky, very frustratingly hard Pokemon to knock out. Set up Trick Room, and then just go for the special attack damage from there. That 130 special attack, you can go with the Modest Nature. I just like the Impish Nature because you're going to get more out of it, but the Modest Nature pushing you almost to 400. Scald is going to be stabbed, have that chance to burn. Flamethrower is going to take out Scizor, Ferrothorn, a lot of those steel threats as well. And then Slack Off is just going to be there for healing while setting up a Trick Room. So then you put another Pokemon next to it that benefits from Trick Room, and let the scary times against your opponent in doubles commence. So yeah, like even doubles, like Slowbro works incredibly well in singles, has some strength in doubles. I think there are some better Trick Room Pokemon, like it would be a tough call to see like who could work better. Like Slowbro is a much better offensive Trick Room than Audino, but Audino is a great supportive Trick Room. So again, these Megas fill so many roles, and they don't even have to be Mega. Slowbro is a great Trick Room setter on its own without a Mega, which means you could have Mega Mawile in that Trick Room, and we already see that combo, and it works really well. And then there's just some other ideas. Rest, Talk, Calm Mind, Scald. It's pretty much like this with the Rest instead of Slack Off. And that's kind of one of the strengths that I see here is that Rest, Sleep Talk, well, now you're sleep talking. With what I was thinking, you max out the defenses. That way you're getting the most out of your defense, getting the most out of your hit points. And I don't know why I have Sassy Nature here, honestly, that if you actually changed it around, you could get more points just doing something like this. Anyway, if you run it like this, you're going to have a huge amount of defensive bulk. I would even go as far, like, putting as much into that defense as possible. And then what happens from there is your Sleep Talk, you're either going to hit them with Scald or Calm Mind, which means your special defense is going up while close to full health from the Rest and Sleep Talk. That's insane. That, like, you Sleep Talk, Calm Mind twice, you use it while you're awake, you rest into Scald, and now you're an uncrittable, almost unstoppable beast that's just throwing out Scald damage left and right. If they get burned, your defenses become almost 1,000. Mega Slowbro's busted. Mega Audino's busted. Mega Sableye's busted. Mega Sharpedo can be really broken. Salamence is busted. God dang, and we haven't even looked at the other ones yet. Like, we're still Mega Blaziken, Mega Kings. I'm having a breakdown from all of the potential. Game Freak, they've lost their mind in a brilliant way. Like, I love it. I love that now it's not just one or two really strong megas, that there's a mega for every team. There's a mega for every idea. There's a mega for every play style. And it's beautiful to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're not even done with all the megas. This is just Mega Slowbro, guys. I hope you guys have a nice day. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Vrilla's here, and let's look at the fluffiest Pokemon in the game, Mega Altaria. So its stats are really fun and interesting, that everything but speed and hit points breaks 100, so you have this really nice Pokemon that can kind of play on a physical offensive standpoint, or a special offensive standpoint, or just be a crazy tank. So it just plays a really mixed game like that, and it's really fun to look at, that you can kind of take it many different ways, and with its Pixelate ability, it means it can transition very well as an offensive or specially offensive Pokemon. Looking at its typing, Dragon Fairy, that's interesting typing. It kind of doesn't make sense, and when you look at the weaknesses and everything, just kind of adds on to itself. That you're going to keep your weakness to Ice Fairy, you're going to keep your weakness to Poison Steel, and now you gain an immunity to Dragon. So it's kind of interesting to see a Dragon Pokemon that's not supered by another Dragon. Very interesting. You have a ton of resistances, so that does help with tankiness and decent amount of neutral hits. So let's hop into Pokemon Showdown, kind of look at all the crazy ways of running Mega Altaria. And with that Pixelate ability, you can get some excellent coverage. Return is going to get 30% boost, and then it's going to get Stab. Earthquake's going to be able to round out your set really nicely, and the way I see it is initially setting up Dragon Dance. That you give yourself a good amount of hit point bulk, your defenses will keep you fairly healthy, and over time your speed will grow. So the way I see it is you set up Dragon Dance. If they're not two-hit KOing you, you can roost Dragon Dance and then start going for some KOs with a ridiculous amount of speed and a very high offense from there. That Pixelate boost is going to make return close to 200 base power, and then Earthquake is going to coverage out against Rock and Steel. It's really nice overall. So looking at some other ideas that I was thinking about, Double Battles is going to be excellent for Mega Altaria because Pixelate Hyper Voice. Pokemon gets Hyper Voice and some kind of changing move like Pixelate, it's going to be an awesome doubles Pokemon. That the way I see it here, though, is it's going to take a little bit more care. That you're going to have to support this Pokemon, maybe put up on a Tailwind, or try to find some kind of way of utilizing that so you can get more speed into it. And then from there, it's just going to be able to hit super hard. Also, it doesn't have to be the fastest Pokemon on the field. With the proper sweeping support, or just a regular other support Pokemon, it can endure hit and then dish out a monstrous Hyper Voice. 90 base power hitting both opponents, getting that boost with the Pixelate, and then getting Stab. It's going to be very nice. Draco Meteor is going to be some good coverage as well. Just kind of nuke one opponent if you need to, and then Flamethrower for that coverage against Steel types. Protect is always needed in doubles, and that's kind of the way that this breaks down. As much speed as you can get out of it, to outspeed what you can. Modest to get the biggest hit possible, because putting a speedy nature on an 80 base speed doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it can still come through. And that's like what I like about this Pokemon, that right there, boom, we can already have a special set that's going to be more for doubles, and then a single set for the Dragon Dance. But you can still run the Dragon Dance in doubles as well. It just shows this Pokemon has a lot of diversity. That's what I love about it. And now we have these set up. So Altaria is one of the few Pokemon that gets Cotton Guard. It's going to be just a monstrous defensive tank. So you max out special defense, max out its hit points, put the rest into defense, and now you have a Pokemon that's going to have over 600 defense after that first Cotton Guard usage, completely walling out almost any physical Pokemon. Set up Dragon Dance for the speed, Roost for the heal, and then Return is just going to devastate any of your opponents. Putting 2 or 3 Dragon Dances into this Pokemon, going to have a ton of outspeed, over 300 defense, over 300 hit points, over 600 defense, over 300 special defense, and then you're throwing out a 200 base power hit. If Altaria gets set up, there's nothing that can stop it, and that's what's amazing about this Pokemon, that with a heavy physical meta, Cotton Guard Pokemon are very strong, and now you have a Mega with Cotton Guard that has over 100 defense in that stat. That's kind of scary. It also kind of brings back what Ampharos can do. Ampharos can set up really hard with Cotton Guard and Charge, so this kind of just shows that as well, and many different Pokemon, many different ways. This Pokemon can run very fast, or it can be a more enduring Pokemon that you play for that defensive gain, and then boom, you go and win. So if you guys enjoyed the video, that's how you use Mega Altaria. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Vrilla's here. We're taking a trip from Kalos to Hoenn, and we're bringing Pyroar with us. Pyroar's move tutors in Oras, they really don't make sense, because it learns Endeavor through level up. It learns Hyper Voice through level up, and that really only leaves us with Heat Wave, which is only good in doubles, so it doesn't really improve the singles power of Pyroar too much, and Helping Hand, which means you have to be some kind of supportive Pokemon. These are pretty much the only two tutors that Pyroar gets in ORAS, and it's kind of upsetting because there's bits and pieces here for Pyroar that could make it pretty strong. That Rivalry, if you get the right matchup, that 25% boost, really nice. However, with your speed, you're going to have to run that Timid Nature to make sure you get as much outspeeds as possible, which kind of limits you on your special attack. At the same time, Choice Specs is a bit too risky. You can Choice Specs into a Flamethrower or something to try to get as much damage as possible. So you're always just a little bit under where you want to be in damage, it feels like. But you do have some decent 2-hit KO potential, and since you have a nice little hit point bulb, sometimes you're not going to get directly one shot, as long as you're not eating a super effective hit. But being fire and normal typing, very awesome and unique typing, you might encounter some pretty common weaknesses. So pretty much I was thinking, might as well try to see how Pyro works in doubles with all of this. That Heat Wave and Hyper Voice, you're getting stab coverage on both of your opponents in doubles, which can work out really well while also being pretty quick. Having Pyro as like a mid-range sweeper, not really a support, not really a heavy carry, can work out pretty well. That Hyper Voice, hits both opponents, going to have that normal boosted stab. Life Orb and Rivalry, that Rivalry could work out really well. That even though the damage is risk-reward, if they're both same gender, I would go with male. Male is generally the most common gender. However, to a degree, you might also want a female, since there are a lot of Cresselia and a lot of Kangaskhan out there. So it's kind of like depending on what you think the meta will run at the same time, but also male is just pretty common that you're going to see more male Pokemon than female. So it's just really weird like that. At the same time, you could be doing boosted damage, or you could be doing less damage. If you're doing boosted damage, Life Orb, Hyper Voice, Stab, or Heat Wave, or all that, even though your special attack isn't the most insane, that could be at least half of an opponent's health on a neutral hit. Depending, it's also really weird because when you're hitting both of your opponents in doubles, it does 75% reduced damage. So if you're hitting a same gender Pokemon, you're not really going to be doing too much. But if you're hitting an opposite gender, you're going to be really chipping them away and leading to a lot of follow-up. That I wouldn't really support Pyroar, except with more damage. That you could have a Pokemon that's trying to set up maybe a quick Dragon Dance or a quick little bit of damage, or it's just throwing out its own Rock Slide. Unfortunately, you can't use Earthquake unless you use Protect, because then you might be able to play it off like that. Have Pyroar throw out some moves, set up, or just use a Protect. That Pyroar Protect, throw out an Earthquake, you might be able to get a double KO or something like that, as long as you're just hitting over and over dual-hitting moves while trying to keep yourself a little safe. That's kind of my main direction for Pyroar with the way this breaks down. Like, Heat Wave does at least give you some extra coverage options, and then Dark Pulse, again, a little extra coverage. Also, it lets you pick and choose your opponent's gender, I guess. That you know which Pokemon you can be more effective against, and if it's going to be super effective by a Dark-type move, could work out pretty well. And then there's support tank-ish Pyroar. Now this is a very interesting setup, and it can work out really well. And the reason why the EVs look so weird is because Pyroar's hit points are very high. If we fully invest in the hit points, the effective hit points we're getting isn't as high from just a full return. So by actually putting a couple points into our defense and special defense, we become 1 to 2% tankier. So it's just optimization. If you just want to max it out, hit point speed, you're not really losing too much, but it could help Pyroar in these really off chances, like we're not getting super effective blown up or something like that. After that, I was thinking Citrus Berry, just give yourself some sustain. That way, you use your speed. Try to Will-O-Wisp an opponent really quick if they're physical. You also have Helping Hand to help support an ally using a very strong move. You can use Yawn. You can maybe also just have Protect, depending on how you want to run it. Heat Wave for a little extra damage. Yawn with Protect is very strong. In doubles, bit more interesting because your opponent might have to switch out and then come into a strong move while also trying to have their ally support them, or you just throw out the Yawn, throw out the Will-O-Wisp, start distributing some status, use Heat Wave to chip in some damage, and then Helping Hand to really finish off some opponents. People might not expect it. I'm not saying it's incredibly strong, but it seems like it could be something that could really catch your opponent off guard if you really want to use Pyroar. That we're taking advantage of the ORAS move tutors to at least improve its strength a little. Will-O-Wisp is never a bad idea, and with this, since you're not really worrying about damage too much, I like Unnerve. That Unnerve, you don't really see it because a lot of Pokemon have better abilities, but on Pyroar, it's kind of the best thing that it has, and it prevents the opponent from using berries, which means they can't Lumberry away their Will-O-Wisp or Yawn, which is really nice, or they can't use a Citrus Berry on their own if they're trying to get some health back. So this could also hurt Rotom pretty well, because it likes having Citrus Berry just to be extra tanky and getting that burst health when you think you might be able to knock it out, because Rotom's fairly frustrating like that. Other than that, that's kind of what we're looking at, You have some offensive capability that can be followed up really well in doubles, and like I mentioned before, the singles really doesn't change, because, Helping Hand or Heat Wave. 5 more base power on a Pyroar, and even then, like singles Pyroar for offenses, you could be doing a little better. So at least trying to make Pyroar support or backing up some damage could work out really well, because it does have some decent speed to make it happen. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's how we take Pyroar and use it in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Sunflora. Sunflora is a Pokemon you don't see too often, and we can kind of see why when we look at its stats. That's going to be 30 on the speed. If you want to be the fastest Pokemon on the field, you're going to have to be in a Trick Room, and even then, now that means you're putting a 55 defense Pokemon, 85 special defense, and 75 hit points. It doesn't really have too much survivability in that, and also its highest stat is going to be 105 on the special attack. They're just stronger Pokemon to use in a lot of different scenarios, but we are still going to make Sunflora work if you really want to use Sunflora. Unfortunately, though, life as a Sunflower is pretty tough because the elements do not like you. Fire, ice, bug, poison, flying weakness. Everything is just kind of going to be mean like that. You do get resistances to ground, water, grass, and electric. That pure grass typing is only going to make life difficult. Let's go and hop into Pokemon Showdown to see what Sunflora can do. Except that Sunflora doesn't get much. This is not a moveset. These are just some of the more interesting things that Sunflora gets that you can use to incorporate into a moveset. But mostly when we're looking at, Petal Blizzard. Not a lot of Pokemon get Petal Blizzard. Hits all adjacent Pokemon in double battles, so that means at least you get to do a little bit of damage to your opponents, and you can maybe set up some kind of Sap Sipper if you need to boost up that way. Petal Blizzard is a good option. Unfortunately, Sunflora has a higher special attack than physical attack, so it's going to make a Petal Blizzard not an optimal damage move, but it is something that can be used to start a combo. Sunflora is also one of the few Pokemon to get Flower Shield, raise the defense by 1 of all active grass type Pokemon. So that means if you're on a team with another grass type Pokemon, you can at least use Flower Shield, give yourself some defense, and then give them some defense, and that's kind of okay. Encore, it's just a good disruption move against status kind of Pokemon, that if they're not using a harmful status, then, or if they're not using a harmful move, you can just kind of use Encore on them. So if they're trying to set up Stealth Rocks or something, you might be able to take advantage of that. And then we also just have Curse, that if you use it, you gain defense and attack, which might work out. I mean, in singles, if you're going for like a Curse sustain set, you can maybe pull that off with Sunflora. With this set on Sunflora, it's pretty much set up Sunny Day, use Chlorophyll to double your speed. Hopefully they use some kind of status or entry hazard move like we talked about earlier. Encore, lock them down, and then use Solar Beam on Pokemon that are switching out or in, and try to get some damage before you get knocked out. For extra coverage, you do have Earth Power. Earth Power and Solar Beam is going to be kind of nice because you are resisted by Poison and Steel types, so Earth Power is going to be able to hit that. But at the same time, you can also see if you get a decent Hidden Power. Hidden Power Rock has some good, Hidden Power Rock or Hidden Power Ice is going to be decent on Sunflora, and that's kind of it. Now, also, let's take a look at, Sunflora's stats. Unfortunately, that 30 base speed is just super upsetting. That with a modest nature, you're at 159, you're not even breaking 320 speed, so you're going to have to go timid. And even then, you're not even breaking 350 speed. So your Chlorophyll isn't going to be super outspeedy. It's mostly, I'm setting up Sunny Day, I'm hoping I get an Encore shutdown, and then I can get some damage. And if I get knocked out, well, at least Sunny Day is active. I didn't have to put a Ninetales on my team. I put a Sunflora instead, kind of idea, and then you can do whatever. Other things that Sunflora can do, I just have this one to kind of build a set, a Curse. If you want to just go Curse, Leech Seed, that's at least going to give you some kind of stats. And then when we look at it, it's tough to go for any kind of spread on this. I was thinking we could put a little investment into your special defense, go with that special defensive nature. We would want a careful nature in this situation. Then we just put the rest into hit points and defense and kind of hope for the best. That as long as you're not getting overly blown up by your many super effective hits, you might be able to get a couple of curses, hide behind Leech Seed, and then you can just kind of use your options from there. That at least we already saw that Petal Blizzard. It's a pretty solid move, 90 base power, 100 accuracy, so that's going to be pretty solid right there. And then as for your other moves, I don't really know what else to say. You could put down Toxic, that way we're at least going for some status on top of it. So Toxic Leech Seed is going to burn down your opponent pretty well. It's going to give you a little bit of sustain. Also, you do have access to Synthesis. So now we can just kind of look at Synthesis, but you're going to get walled out by Grass-type Pokemon and Sap Sipper Pokemon pretty hard. So maybe not even Petal Blizzard. it's just one of those things where, you know, you can't really use against everything with these grass setups, these mono grass setups. It's just kind of, you're really stretching to get some tankiness on you. That's really all that Sunflora is going to be able to do. In doubles, you have Flower Shield and Petal Blizzard setups, and that's kind of it. Also gets access to Helping Hand, but overall, Sunflora is one of those just completely almost uncompetitive Pokemon that's not really going to have the stats to back it up. It does have a good kit. Like, if it had more speed, might be able to get some outspeeds. Maybe if it was a higher special attack. You know, if it gets Mega and keeps Chlorophyll, there could be some potential there. It could also maybe just be a Drought Pokemon if it Megas. But, you know, that's just wishful thinking at this point. If it gets an evolution, there could be some potential. Like, these stats right here, you know, we could have a really good Sun Sweeper on our hands at some point. But as of now, you know, there's not a lot of tankiness. There's not a lot of survivability. The setup is pretty difficult on it. And that's kind of all there is to Sunflora. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a nice day. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verla's here. This is how to use Rattata, Raticate, and Arbok. So Rattata has, like, no stats, and we'll just go straight to Raticate. And Raticate also has, like, no stats. So here's the interesting thing about Pokemon. You've noticed that when you go through your Pokemon adventures, you're going to progressively find Pokemon of better and higher base stat totals, because it's not that fun if you get, like, a super OP Pokemon at the beginning of the game and you can steamroll all the way through. Raticate is the evolution of one of the first Pokemon that you will ever encounter, so naturally its stats are going to get kneecapped like that. So we have 97 being our highest, and it's on speed, which is okay. Unfortunately, there's just too many 100 base speed Pokemon for this to mean anything, and with your 81 attack, even if you outspeed something, you're not going to hurt it at all. There's a reason why Ash didn't even use Raticate in the Battle Aboard the SSN episode. Like, he called it out. He's like, Butterfree. Oh, wait, you're not Butterfree anymore. Spoiler alert, by the way. And then he didn't even say, Raticate, get in there. No, he just went, all right, Pidgeotto, go. So, Pidgeotto, better than Raticate, confirmed right there. Look at the typing, normal typing. It's not going to give us any benefits as well, that we're going to be resisted by Rock, Steel, and immune by Ghost offensively, and defensively, like, we just don't get any advantages. We don't have any super effective hits, we don't get any hard resistances besides the Ghost, and we are still weak against fighting. So, very basic, very normal, middling Pokemon right here, if not above, or if not below average when it comes to these stats. And then next up is Arbok. So Arbok's stats are a little better defensively. Like Raticate, it's going to get one shot by everything. Arbok, if you put a little bit defensive investment, it might have a chance to survive. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot of speed and has slightly more on the attack. Lucan's typing, poison typing. Poison typing is actually really good. Like, straight up poison only really has to worry about Earthquake and the few offensive Psychic type attacks out there that you see. Like, mostly just Psychic Pokemon trying to benefit from stab. There isn't really a lot of situations where non-Psychic Pokemon techs in a Psychic type move, unless it's like a Fairy type Pokemon trying to get that Psyshock in there. And even that's not the most common thing. And if we can outspeed that Fairy type and get on it, we can blow it up before anything really matters. So it works out for the Pokemon. Also getting that buff in the 6th generation, resisting Fairy, having a super effective stab hit that will hit fairies, and just a lot of resistances in general. So poison typing's pretty solid, and maybe Arbok will actually be able to use that to its advantage. Into Pokemon Showdown, Rattata is all about the fear, and that's why when we look right here, we didn't care about the low stats or anything, because level 1 is all that matters, and then we go Focus Sash, Endeavor, Quick Attack, Rattata. That's the fear in Fear, boys, and the idea behind it is that you 1-for-1 pretty much any Pokemon that is not a Ghost-type Pokemon or doesn't have any priority, but other than that, you just use Endeavor, you take the hit because you're slower than everything, you're going to get destroyed by everything, your opponent gets dropped to 1 hit points by the Endeavor, your Quick Attack will be enough to finish them off, and then we're good to go. The problem about Endeavor is this right here. Since this counts as a physical move, you cannot affect Ghost-type Pokemon, which is the first time when I revealed the strategy I made that error, because like, oh, you run the Sucker Punch. Well, the thing about Sucker Punch is that it works against Ghost-type Pokemon, but you can't Endeavor them down. It is worth running, though. If you have the Sucker Punch, there are those weird scenarios where maybe there's a Focus Sash Ghost-type Pokemon on your opponent's team, like a Gengar or something. They knocked out your Pokemon, so then you just come in, Sucker Punch them, and then Rattata can like 2-for-1 or like 1.5-for-1, because then it fear strats over your opponent, and you're good to go from there. So interesting stuff. Like, it's the very, very low odds chance, but you do not want to be in that 1 in a million time where you're stuck with a Quick Attack and you can't Sucker Punch the 1 hit point Ghost Pokemon for the win, which is like the most unfortunate thing ever. Like, you just don't worry about it like that, and that's pretty much all that there is to Rattata. Ultimate 1-for-1, really powerful, can destroy a Mewtwo, so you can run it for that kind of gimmick if you need to. Raticate. It doesn't really do too much because, again, the hit points are super low and it doesn't have enough speed. So I was thinking about tank busting. If you're running a tanky Pokemon, you are most likely not using speed investment, so that's what Raticate's going to be good for. That any Pokemon, even some Pokemon with, like, specific speed investment as a tankier Pokemon, will not be able to outspeed the Raticate, so you just max out the hit points, try to survive what you can, and since you are going to get blown up by almost any neutral hit anyways, or take extreme amounts of damage, you might as well be facing against tanks where they do less damage to you naturally. So that's why we have Focus Energy. Focus Energy plus Razor Claw gives you a 100% chance to crit, and Body Slam is going to add on to that. Not only is there a 30% chance paralyzed, which I'm not really relying on too much, there is the secondary effect of Body Slam, where if your opponent has used Minimize, Body Slam has 100% accuracy and double the power. So the idea behind this is that depending on what your opponent's going for, you can Super Fang down a tank and then Body Slam them for a crit to finish them off, or at least get some substantial damage onto that Pokemon. Super Fang is why I see this as a really good tank busting set. Just drops them from full health to half immediately, and then we just tech in the crunch because Super Fang, Body Slam, we're going to be stopped by ghost types, but if we can hit a ghost with a super effective crunch that's getting a crit as well, that's pretty solid. Another benefit of critting all the time is that if your opponent's going for like Iron Defense, Stockpile, Cosmic Power, anything that boosts their defense, crit's going to ignore it, and it can really undo their strategy. So a little bit of extra damage stops the Minimize, tank bust on that Super Fang. I think that's the most we can get out of this Raticate. However, this is not a moveset. This is just other things that Raticate can do, showing off the moveset. You know, we get Revenge, so we're already expecting to take a hit. So the opponent, you know, they hit us, we revenge, we can do a 120 base power fighting move. That works out pretty well. We also have a reversal. So, like, Focus Sash reversal gimmick into that Hustle works out pretty well. Now, the Hustle ability is weird. 1.5 times more damage is pretty insane. Now, unfortunately, we could just miss any move, which could be a problem. Last Resort is something that we get. Unfortunately, we don't get the agility. So, like, if we get agility Last Resort combo, that would be pretty nice under that Hustle. The times when we do land it would blow up the opponent, but we don't get that. Final Gambit is a move we learn as well. Unfortunately, our hit points aren't really high enough, so even with max hit point investment, we're not going to get anything out of the Final Gambit. And Counter. Counter is just a little gimmick that might work, but overall, it's something to consider, something that might or might not work. Now, the last thing I was looking at for, like,